You're welcome to the Policy Council. My name is Okwemi Agbaje. This week we look at Islamic banking and finance, a trend that is growing. And the Central Bank of Nigeria is strongly promoting its introduction in Nigeria and wants to make Nigeria a center for Islamic finance. Many support the CBN, and many also have concerns about the introduction. This week, we'll look at both sides of the issue and we'll allow you, the viewers, to make up your mind. Enjoy the program. On this segment, I have as my guest Mrs. Hajara Adeola. She's the CEO of Lotus Capital, an investment firm with buyers for Islamic financial products. Right. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Now, Hajara, what is it about Islamic banking, Islamic finance? Why do you think there's a discussion around that today?
It's one of the fastest growing financial subsectors in the world. It's growing at about 15 to 20% per annum, and today is valued globally at about $1 trillion US. And the basis for Islamic finance is interesting. It's a common theme that runs through all the Abrahamic faiths. And really, it's an economic principle that says the economy cannot run the way we have it in the general capitalist system, that there has to be a bit more morality and ethics that come into finance, and that finance needs to be engaged with productive use of assets to create wealth and profits, not just making money from money. Is that you find references to this in Judaism, in the Torah, in the Bible, and also in the Quran. It's called Islamic finance really by coincidence, because the Muslims have held on to that aspect of their faith more than some of the other faiths, but really it's a common principle amongst the faiths. And it's an alternative form of finance. It's really a choice for people who want to abide by their faiths.
There are those who are worried about Islamic finance, the mere fact that this is religion. It's not like banking codified, like mainstream banking. So you have to have references to the Quran and to Sharia and all of that. There are many who are afraid that in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society like Nigeria, that why should we go this route?
Okay, I'd like to correct a misconception. It is not religion. It is finance.
Okay.
It is business, and it is economics. The codification is following a law, just as you have Roman law, canon law, and so on. You have Sharia law that has certain codes that guide the way business and finance should be conducted. And that is the part that is being referred to in Islamic finance. It's got nothing to do with the rest of the religion in terms of worship or your relationship with God or anything else. It's only related to the codes that affect the way transactions should be done. And if I tell you some of these codes, I don't think it's anything that anybody would find offensive. For example, you should not finance any areas of businesses that are deemed to be socially unacceptable. You shouldn't finance alcohol, gambling, ammunition, pornography. That's the first level.
But if I was a pig farmer, you wouldn't finance me?
I wouldn't finance you, but that's why I said it's an alternative form of finance. So for me, it's just like saying, why should you have a vegetarian restaurant and a restaurant that sells all kinds of meat? It's a choice. Those who want to eat meat will go to the meat restaurant. Those who want vegetarian food and have an aversion to meat will go to the vegetarian restaurant. One does not preclude the other's rights or impose on the other's rights in any way or form.
Let me give you my personal engagement with this issue. Initially, when I had Islamic banking, I said, why not? Muslims need, if they want it, why not? And until I read the first guidelines the central bank issued, I must admit I was shocked by those guidelines. What did you think of those guidelines from the constitutional, legal, and from the secular nature of the Nigeria's constitution? Those first guidelines.
I'd like to know what shocked you, and I could really...
It read like a religious document. It required the central bank to set up a Sharia council. It mentioned all sorts of products, murabba, sukuk, this, that. I'm just being honest.
Yes,
I was
absolutely,
shocked. And I felt immediately that no, there's something about this. But then perhaps the CBN itself agreed, because they withdrew those initial guidelines and wrote a second set of guidelines. Let's discuss that framework that they now have. What are your thoughts about it?
When people, in my experience, when people hear the word Sharia, there's a certain image that comes into their mind, and not necessarily a positive image. But if you understand what Sharia means, Sharia is a set of codified laws under the Islamic faith. And like I said, for Islamic finance, the only aspect of Sharia that is relevant here are the aspects of Sharia that pertain to economic finance, economic trade, business interactions between people and between corporations. You also mentioned some Arabic words, murabaha, sukuk, and at first glance you can think, oh, this is Islamic. But these are not Islamic terms. These are simply Arabic words. And I could translate them to you into English. And why I get amused personally is because if they had brought a set of French words, German words, Chinese words, nobody would have raised an eyebrow. And in finance, in so many other fields, we use Latin words, we use Greek words, and nobody says they're trying to Greekify us or or whatever it is. Yeah. And perhaps you don't need to use those words as long as the principles are maintained. A sukuk is an Islamic bond. So it's a bond that gives you a return based on the transaction that has been entered into. But it's the same as a conventional bond, except that it's not at interest. Okay. And murabaha is a trade finance product, cost plus. Instead of giving money a loan to finance their trade, you buy the raw material they require from them, sell it to them at a markup cost, and they pay you over time. That's all it is. So there's no conspiracy behind anything.
On that conspiracy note, let's take a break. We'll be back. You're welcome back. Hajara, we spoke about a conspiracy, and true, there are many Nigerians who perceive a conspiracy to Islamize Nigeria. And they say Boko Haram says so. They say 12 states in the north have declared Sharia. They say there must be some agenda to this. In that wider socio-economic or political context, do you understand the fears that people are expressing?
As far as people are expressing something, one has to take cognizance of it and respect it. But I also feel that there are a lot of politics that is coming in to distort issues. People say Islamicize. What does that mean? How has it occurred? Nigeria is so fortunate. There's hardly a family that is purely one religion or one tribe. I'm sure you can say the same. I can certainly say the same. So, I mean, what are we talking? Since when is Boko Haram the spokesperson for Nigeria or for Muslims? How does Boko Haram relate to Islam? I don't like to join issues, and I also don't like to pander to. Perhaps some people have a political agenda, I believe, to divide, to cause this kind of divisions and conflicts that do not really exist. Because if you ask the average person if they hate a fellow human being on the basis of their faith or where they come from, I don't believe that that's the case. So I don't really give it much credence.
Let's look at the model itself. I noticed that the CBN model was copied from Malaysia.
That's right.
And one of the concerns that I've had expressed is, well, Malaysia and all other countries that we cite tend to be official Islamic nations with a preponderant Muslim population. Why do you think the central bank has chosen a model from such a country rather than perhaps a model from the UK or from the US or from South Africa, which are constitutionally secular, as they would say, states?
Well, I don't believe Malaysia is a Muslim state. It's an Islamic state. It's a republic, as far as I'm aware. And I believe that the pioneers in Islamic finance, interestingly, have been some of the countries you mentioned. The UK, some of the first Islamic bonds, sukuk, you mentioned earlier, were Germany. The US, my first work experience as an intern in Islamic finance about 12, 13 years ago was in Washington, D.C., working in an Islamic finance firm in America. So I think there's a misconception about it's Muslim countries that want Islamic finance. We are the ones looking at it as an you keep on looking at it as an Islamic issue. It's an economic and a business model. Issue. And if you look at the finance ministers across the world, starting with the current IMF president, Christine Lagarde, all of them are looking at borrowing certain precepts from this for economic stability and prosperity. France is passing laws for Islamic finance. The UK has done taken amazing strides in doing that, including some of their tax laws. Germany, Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, They're all passing laws to make Islamic finance possible. But you ask why Malaysia, and I think in a way the central bank has been feted across the world for adopting the Malaysian model because it's seen to be the most robust in terms of protecting the consumer point. Because the core difference between Islamic finance and conventional finance is that Islamic finance must be based in reality. There must be a real transaction on the ground. And as you will know, a lot of the crisis we've experienced across the world over the last 3 years has been because we've been dealing in a completely derivative, inflated market based on a tiny real market, and everything else is really speculation.
Fiction. Thank you very much, Hajara. We enjoyed listening to you, and I'm sure you will be back on the Policy Council.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When I use the footbridge, one of many spread across our Lagos, I can tell that the government truly cares, and I'm glad that I pay my tax. Now, the more money the state has, the more it will do for you. Do you pay your tax? I pay.
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back to the Policy Council. We're still talking Islamic banking and finance. And we've had the argument for, the case for. We want to hear the concerns from those who have concerns about the approach of implementation. And my guests are Professor Bankole Sodipo, Babcock University. He's the head of Department of Civil and Commercial Law. You're welcome. And Ehis Eyeye is, of course, the CEO of Fathers Consulting. Let me start with Ehis. Ehis, what can be wrong with providing financial services to millions of Muslims in Nigeria?
There's nothing wrong with providing finance through the Islamic finance, the Islamic banking and finance model. And nobody has, those of us that have concerns are not worried about the provision of finance to Muslims in the manner they've proposed. What is the issue is the fact that the Central Bank of Nigeria has done so totally oblivious of the legal provisions in the BOFIA, that's the Banking and Other Financial Institutions Act, and also the Nigeria Constitution. Islamic finance is not new to Nigeria. In the 1991 BOFIA, the law made provision for profit and loss sharing banking, which is essentially what the non-interest banking is about. And there was never, it was never supposed to be a religious issue, because that same BOFIA actually says that you are not even allowed to talk about a Christian bank, a Muslim bank, a Sharia bank, or Islamic bank, or a biblical bank. Those names are even bad in the BOFIA. And when Jaiz Bank was issued an approval in principle in 2004 by the Central Bank of Nigeria, it was given that approval to do profit and loss sharing banking, and there was no hue and cry about it. Nobody, there were no protests. Nobody condemned the CBN for what it did because it followed the law. So the challenge was that in January 2011, when the Central Bank came up with a guideline, the non-interest